Hjertelig velkommen alle sammen. Og finne veien hit en fredagskveld. Welcome, all of you. We have this is the opening of the Sergio Leone seminar. This is a yearly event. We have an Italian seminar here at the Cinemateket. And this is collaboration with the Italian Cultura Institute. And I want to exchange thanks to the Institute for all the help in making this happen, especially Erlevol and Matteo Fabrizi, and also the University of Oslo, Helge Rønning and Ove Solum. And Helge Rønning you are going to be able to hear tomorrow. He's one of the speakers, and I hope many of you also will attend tomorrow, because we start at 11 with the first lecture, and then a film for a few dollars more, for a fistful of dollars. And then Helge Rønning will talk about Once Upon a Time in the West, and the Sergio Leone and genre films. And at 2 o'clock and a quarter to 3, then we'll screen the film. And we are also bringing in a guest from Italy, who's an expert on Leone. Roberto Donati is going to be the main speaker tonight, before the screening of the band Ugly. And hopefully a lot of you will stay for that. After Roberto's lecture, about 50 minutes, we'll take a short break, 10 minutes, so that you can use the toilet or buy something in the bar, because the film is almost 3 hours long, so I think you need that short break. Then I'll give the word to Roberto Donati, and he'll give us the overview of Leone. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you very much for this invitation and for being here. I really thank you, and I'm very happy and proud to present Leone. Coming to Sergio Leone, who is Sergio Leone? Sergio Leone was born on January the 3rd, 1929, in Rome. That is when Benito Mussolini, fascism, already was the Italian political condition leader. This shouldn't appear just as a historical and existential casualty, but as we will see, it will have a great impact in Leone's career, and especially either in his style and poetic. So Leone came from a family profoundly connected with cinema and with the Italian film industry at the time. His father was Vincenzo Leone, also known as Roberto Roberti, an important silent movies director and also, politically said, an anti-fascist person. Among his artistic discoveries, there was the Italian famous star Francesca Bertini, and furthermore, he was one of the first directors to realize a Western movie in Italy, always during the silent era. Now this film is basically lost. Because his political beliefs, he was overwhelmed in the film career and ended his life in Torella dei Lombardi, very close to Avellino, in the south of Italy, where he was born. On the opposite front, Leone's mother was Edvige Valcarenghi, a silent movie actress, professionally known as Bice Valeran. Of course, she played lots of film for his husband, who quit her film career in 1916 to be just a wife and then a mother. So we already have the two main paths which will lead Leone to make movies. As he always used to say, he was pretty born in a film theater, so making movies was just a sort of predestination. Even if his father dreamed a career in law for his son Sergio, he was immediately attracted by movies, and especially by making movies. On the other hand, when Leone grew up and developed his interests, we have the hard historical reality of Italy in the 30s and 40s. At that time, one of the statements of fascism was the full autarky. that is, the impediments in establish and develop cultural and commercial bounds with the rest of the world, as much as import foreign products or arts. Italy had to be enough for itself and for the Italians. According to this, apart some forms of clandestinity, especially from 1939 to 1944, stuff coming from abroad, and in particular from US, was literally condemned and abolished. What's the deal with this happening and Leone? Of course, as for lots of artists, especially in literature, some of them are Cesare Pavese, Beppe Fenoglio, Elio Vittorini, later Italo Calvino, the American culture became something close to be a myth, a sort of legend. And American culture meant not only wide spaces literature, like that one of John Steinbeck or John Dos Passos, or again William Faulkner, but also comic books. Sergio Leone was a very devoted reader of comics, and indeed his violence in films has pretty much a cartoonesque hint. And above all, cinema, with its natural wide-angle perspective and its main American genres, Western, of course, and then noir or gangster movies, and the sophisticated comedy, and so on. This means that when fascism went down in the early 40s, Sergio Leone was in his full childhood, almost a teenager. And this all means that American culture, with its strongest power of imagination, in comparison with the other foreign cultures, broke down in the Italian culture all of a sudden. The suggestion for America derives not from the reality of the America, but its legend, given through literature, music, films, art. In many interviews, Sergio Leone, as for his friends or working partners, remembered that during the 40s he could see westerns all the day or read all the Hemingways, along he wasn't able to read before. This is a crucial passage. Leone, who started to work in film business very young, thanks to his father, it's notorious how his first professional nickname, Bob Robertson, contains a direct homage to him, also started to develop a sincere and huge passion for what was American for him, but not only for him, of course. The America represented the myth, and he always said that in his mind, cinema should be entertainment, and that the most beautiful entertainment is the one offered by myths. Once he said, "In my childhood, America was like a religion. Then, real-life Americans abruptly entered my life and upset all my dreams. I found them very energetic, but also very deceptive. They were no longer the Americans of the West. They were soldiers, like any others, materialistic, possessive, keen on pleasures and earthly goods." This disjunction between American mythology and the reality of America crucially informs all Leone's work. His films are essentially about what America meant to those who have never seen America except through its cinema, for those millions in the world who grow up with a displaced sense of being part of a nation that has no consciousness of its part in them. Towards the end of his life, Leone commented, "I can see America any other way than with European eyes, obviously. It fascinates me and terrifies me at the same time." For Europeans of Leone's generation, growing up in a post-war continent, being rebuilt with US dollars, and politically determined by US foreign policy, the experience of dreaming American dreams while resenting the reality of American domination was particularly acute. This divided relationship with the United States, equal parts derision and longing, love and resentment, perhaps helps explain the difficulty American critics, but also Italians, have had in coming to terms with Leone's work. However, at the time of 40s, the American cinema still represented the American dreams of a united culture which, thanks to the strength of films, transfers social and moral values of US society in the rest of the world. The American cinema, and the Western in particular, was able to be efficient wherever in the world, to create universal myth, and above all, to hide all these signals of morality in actions, in fascinating and entertaining adventures. The American Western proposed a clear world of naturality and evolution without any source of doubt. Undoubtedly, It represented the America of childhood, an uchronic place out of history and geography. It was indeed as much as Greek myths or French chanson de geste were and served as what is generally called something bigger than life, or better than ever. Here, lying in this passage, there literally is who Leone will become as an artist and what he will think about the power of film image. By the fact, he especially was in love with both the Western and the gangster movie genre. Probably they satisfied his desire in watching a movie of a strong impact and strong emotions. In this way, I'm pretty sure films Leone made were exactly films Leone desired to see as a spectator. Anyway, he started his film career mainly as an assistant director. Before of his first directorial effort, and after a very little role in the famous neorealistic The Bicycle Thief by Vittorio De Sica in 1948, he was on the set of almost 50 Italian and American titles, becoming more and more important and working with the best film artisans or film authors the Italian cinema produced after the Second World War. Hollywood production flocked to Rome during this period, called Hollywood in Tevere, to use the cheap facilities and use up local profits from American films, which Italian law demanded is spent within Italy. Leone's credits from this time include Robert Wise's Ellen of Troy, William Wyler's remake of Ben-Hur, and Fred Zinnemann's The Nun's Story. He had the chance to co-direct the first movie, a so-called peplum, or say sword and sandal movie, named Gli ultimi giorni di Pompei, The Last Days of Pompeii, when the supposed director, his aging mentor Mario Bonnar, turned to be sick. Sergio Leone, with his huge experience with Italian and also American crew of American Colossals, did a great job, amplifying the spectacular sequences and the strong impact of the movie. This very good result, the movie was a great success at the time, led him to his very first movie at all, once again a peplum, Il Colosso di Rodi, Colossus of Rhodes. This was the real debut for Leone, and a sort of strategic plan for the film he will think and realize successive years. It is a story of heroism and adventures, with spectacular inventions. The most important is, as title says, the colossal statue at the gates of Rhodes, which becomes, according to Leone Gates, a hideout for heroes and villains. And with the willing to change, to transform, to mix the reality, even the historical one, with the imaginary, with the pure fiction. This is all his career will tell us evidently, the very first proof of a genuine Leone style. Since the beginning, it seems that Leone, according to the famous quotation from the John Ford westerns, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, wanted to respect a basic rule: between the reality and the legend, print the legend. If John Ford chose to investigate the dramatic reality hidden under the heroistic legend, Leone's cinema definitely printed and represented the legend. So then, even if he wasn't the creator of the spaghetti western genre, one of the first Italian westerns was Pistols Don't Argue by Mario Caiano, which shares with A Fistful of Dollars the same soundstage location. Sergio Leone got close to westerns. In contrast to the Euro westerns that preceded it, however, it was clear right from the opening credits of the film that Leone was not interested in simply imitating American western conventions. The film opens with a hazy white spot on a blood-red screen, creating an almost psychedelic effect and immediately setting the tone for Leone's fantasy vision, with one foot in history and the other in Hollywood dreams. The title sequence resounds to the sound of gunshots and Ennio Morricone distinctive music, strikingly different to the orchestral scores and hokey rendition of folk songs that had characterized the soundtracks of American westerns up to that time. Ironically, Leone had initially resisted bringing Morricone and only met with the composer at the behest of his producers. Despite the fact that they had been at school together, Leone considered Morricone's score to an earlier western, Gunfight at Red Sands, directed by Riccardo Blasco in 1963, to be boring and derivative. Morricone won him over by concurring with this opinion, claiming the producer had commissioned a pale imitation of American scores. His collaboration with Leone was an altogether more fulfilling affair, and Morricone went on to cement one of the most fruitful composer-director partnerships in the history of cinema, by scoring all of Leone's subsequent films. Drawing on sound effect experiments he had been conducting since attending a seminar run by the American avant-garde composer John Cage in 1958. Morricone incorporated gunshots, cannon fire, whip cracks, chanting, whistling, and watch chimes into his soundtracks for Leone's first 3 westerns. The attention-grabbing music proved an ideal complement to Leone's Baroque imaginary and playful use of genre iconography. Several other distinctive elements of Leone's approach are apparent from the opening scene of A Fistful of Dollars. The film begins with Clint Eastwood's character approaching a well in a sun-baked landscape of harsh light and whitewashed stone buildings. Whereas many spaghetti westerns sought to make their Spanish location look as much like the American-Mexican border region as possible, Leone's expansive widescreen vistas highlight the landscape's slightly alien feel, creating a setting that certainly doesn't look European, but doesn't quite look American either. Leone was a great admirer of surrealistic dream art, and it is perhaps no coincidence that the Spanish location of his westerns are the same arid dreamscapes Salvador Dalí employed in many of his nightmarish images of the 30s. Leone was to later comment that the cinematographer Tonino Delli filmed the desert sequence in The Good, the Bad and the Ugly in a way that was worthy of the great surrealist painters. In his first 3 westerns, Leone introduced into this landscape an array of grotesque characters with faces as weather-beaten as the countryside they rode through. Leone played up the traditional unshaven image of the western villain, filling his films with an array of bearded, over-the-top Italian actors who leered at the camera and laughed with sweety abandon at their frequent acts of sadistic violence. Their histrionics formed the perfect counterpoint to the restraint Leone elicited from his American actors, such as Clint Eastwood and Lee Van Cleef, cultivating an icy screen presence in the Americans that had only been hinted at in their previous roles. Clint Eastwood was mainly known as a TV cowboy from the Rawhide series, when Leone signed him up for $15,000 to star in the first Dollar film. His original choice had been Henry Fonda, followed by Charles Bronson and James Coburn. Fonda and Bronson turned him down flat, while Coburn proved too expensive for the low-budget production. Leone reluctantly agreed to sign Eastwood after viewing an episode of Rawhide in Rome. A Fistful of Dollars made Eastwood an instant star in Europe, a status he was not to achieve for several more years in America. Eastwood went on to co-star in Leone's next 2 movies, developing a persona that by The Good, the Bad and the Ugly was perfectly balanced between detached ruthlessness and sardonic humor. Leone's films similarly made Lee Van Cleef a major star in Italy, resurrecting an acting career that had never risen above playing villainous hit parts in American films of the 50s. After appearing alongside Eastwood in For a Few Dollars More and The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, Van Cleef went on to make another 10 Italian westerns. Leone's most startling use of an American actor was in his 4th western, Once Upon a Time in the West, 1968. Financial backing from Paramount allowed Leone to fulfill his long-held ambition to work with Henry Fonda. Leone transformed the traditionally clean-shaven hero of American cinema into a blue-eyed child killer of ruthless ambition. But let's go back to the Far West. The West of Leone is not and could not be the real American Far West, of course. Then it is his own West, which he read, watched, knew, played, and imagined since he was a child, and then thought again and recreated as an adult. The same about the America. As the Federico Fellini Rimini in Amarcord was a place of the memory, the America of Leone is not the real America, but is peculiar America, exactly what he dreamed for a whole life. Once upon a time and somewhere there was the West indeed, in the reality and in his memory, or even in dreams. And the American dream of Leone is the one of a somnambulist woken up and all of a sudden flew back to the reality. It is a wounded dream. It smells of death. The Old West world could be, for Leone, lived again just as a nostalgia, with a bitter consciousness it definitely declined. In this sense, Leone's films are above all about living with the image of America, but never being American. His films form a small but potent body of work that may be read as an extended celebration, interrogation, and finally mourning of the myths underlying the 20th century American cinema, as seen from afar. From his first Western, Leone's films revolved around a vision of America as an ubiquitous cultural presence always seen from a distance, through the image. An image that is thrilling, violent, extreme, repulsive, and often ridiculous. Flashbacking again, his first movie, Colossus of Rhodes, showed also up a naive conception of life and human beings. It seems as if making movies was for Leone something like playing against childish games, such as, and this is not casuality again, gunfights between Indians versus cowboys. This film, as all of his films, even the most mature ones, is just a game which enjoys himself and then, by consequences, the audience. I guess, if you may want, I like thinking myself that those children are Sergio Leone remembering himself as a child playing Indians versus cowboys game, or watching movies, most probably westerns, or in any case American movies. His second western, For a Few Dollars More, is not indeed a sequel of his first hit, For a Fistful of Dollars. Of course, the title suggests that idea, but it's actually wrong. It's not about For a Few Dollars More contains two main characters against a villain, instead the one-man hero of the first movie. It's rather about the style, more mature and contented. If Leone's first trilogy, the so-called Dollars trilogy, is the most playful, For a Few Dollars More is the inside title which contains themes and tones close to the second trilogy, the so-called Time trilogy, much more adult and mature. It's in this movie, in my opinion, that fundamental themes of the nostalgia and the related sub-theme of the strong male friendship, which in some various way, but in any way will collapse, came out. Nostalgia for a lost world, probably metaphor of the old American Far West, substituted by a supposedly more civilized world, where the own private vengeance will naturally become the institutional governmental violence. For instance, the Colonel Douglas Mortimer character, splendidly played by Lee Van Cleef, is now a bounty killer. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, nostalgia is a sentimental longing for or regretful memory of a period of the past, especially one in an individual's own lifetime. Or nostalgia also is a sentimental imagining or evocation of a period of the past. The Italian Treccani Encyclopedia, in its definition of the Italian word nostalgia, refers to a melancholy state of mind and elaborates the idea of past by specifying that nostalgic desire is for distant people or something no longer possessed, and by adding the idea of aspiration to a state different from the present one, represented as being distant. Combining these words and definition, in his essay Epos and Nostalgia, Bernard Dorr notes that the Western is in and of itself a genre which is nostalgic because it exists only as a narration of legends. It never ceases to refer to these, but at the same time becomes even more detached from them. Perhaps this is its very fascination, the nostalgia which reawakens in us that lost form, absent from contemporary literature, the early romance, novel, epic. According to Roger Tayer's perspective, Western genre is nostalgic also because it refers to a historical past which is still alive or visible in the 5,000 phantom cities whose dusty skeleton rise all over the country, and which are all of America's nostalgia, all the more alive in that it took place often within one short lifetime. This nostalgia for a lost time and for lost purity, which underlie every story, has always been at the heart of the West. It is as simple as that. The idea of nostalgia is therefore innate in the concept of the American frontier of the Western, since this concept itself is rooted in the reality of travel, of displacement, of distance. In the beginning, it expresses the emotion which animated the first pioneers, the colonists, the adventurers, the people who had to sacrifice their entire previous lives in the name of the American dream, and who, in the process of the invasion of other people's land, or of completely wild territories, thought back with affection and regret on what they had spontaneously left behind. Then, in an established civilization, the same people who were agents of that process feel nostalgia for the conditions which preceded the current ones. It becomes evident, so, that nostalgia expresses the feeling of unsuppressible human dissatisfaction. Distance and suffering, physical and emotional separation, memory and loss. The theme of nostalgia as a representation of pain and of melancholy can be successfully applied to the filmography of Sergio Leone. Nostalgia often assumes shades of measured but painless sadness, whose very lack of pain, however, makes it even more capable of annihilation. It is an emotion which not only is not fled from, but quite the reverse, is often voluntarily and or desperately sought. At the core, there is a process of intellectual and visual memory, and the memory itself is frequently painful and invasive. In Leone's films, it is not the flashbacks which produce this unusual, although daily, sensation. Leone's flashbacks pertain rather to the visceral nature of memory, which consists fundamentally of past and distant traumas, which suddenly returns and manifests itself. It is this dynamic of immediacy and episodic brevity that is in fact alien to nostalgic processes, which must develop more slowly. Nostalgia is instead something which cannot be constrained to brief formulas or summarized simply. It is a mass of intense and impalpable sensations, both mental and corporeal, which inevitably mark and infiltrate every life to some extent. Not even the gunmen in Leone's films are immune. Paradoxically, however, Leone's nostalgia doesn't owe itself to distance from or homesickness for real things and places. It is a purely artistic nostalgia. Leone doesn't miss Colt pistols or bounty hunters, which obviously he never saw nor met. He misses instead the things which these signified in their artistic representations, both in general and in film in particular. Leone's aim is not to reuse the West to restore at last the crude realism which was denied it by the classic Hollywood films, but rather to reinvent an American myth, in light of a pessimistic and European vision, always keeping in mind, however, the original source, which is viewed with admiration and respect, and wherever possible, rendered homage. The constant in Leone's films is not subversion, but rather infatuation. In the end, myth remains myth, and at most it can be restated and updated, not overturned. But Leone's sources are to be found in a range of places, from the obviously epic westerns, for example, Shane, whose simple narrative scheme had a profound impact on Leone, as well as the anthropological and psychoanalytical works of Anthony Mann, Raoul Walsh, or Bud Bettiker, to the hard-boiled literature of Raymond Chandler or Dashiell Hammett, from the film noir to the dry and cutting, vibrant and incisive style of the new American literature, mainly Hemingway and Dos Passos. Behind all of this, there remains the reference, both symbolic and real at the same time, of the American nation as a factory of dreams, a crazed Disneyland where it is possible to find everything and more. The new myth of the modern era to idealize and celebrate, even more fascinating and mysterious because of its geographical distance, which confers on America the uncorporeal, visionary, and dreamlike characteristics of a chimera, and allows an a priori nostalgic and utopian speculation. Symbolic and representative, the Western takes on the colors of autumn and becomes crepuscular. The 60s were an epoch of general cinematographical renewal, and Leone knew how to catch the current changes and give a sharp push, initially in the Italian frame and then on an international level, to representation of violence on the screen and to the mythologization of the hero as well as of the romantic Western tradition. This occurs as much on a stylistic level as in the content. Leone invents, varies, perfects, and adapts to the stylistic models of the age, zooms, wide-angle close-ups, extreme close-ups, and detail in cinemascope, sudden changes in and out of focus within the same shot, but at the same time remains conscious of himself and his own methods. He keeps present what the Western has represented up until this point, of how it has degenerated, and what it should represent it from now on. The air of nostalgia, intellectual maturity, clear-cut pessimism are all an involuntary reflection of the era which produced them, in a group of works which are decidedly separated from current reality. It would not make sense to draw comparisons or outline classification, even temporal ones, but without a doubt, the films of Leone, initially provincial, evolved enough to be justly listed in the revival of American Western films, which occurs between the 60s and 70s. This revival has as other protagonists some of the absolute masters of cinema, such as Sam Peckinpah, Robert Altman, old lions like John Huston and Arthur Penn, as well as extremely important but less well-known filmmakers, Monty Ellman, Sidney Pollack, Robert Benton, Abraham Polonsky, George Roy Hill, Don Siegel, and stubborn hacks who knew how to anticipate the times and saw the possibility of making it big with middling films lacking real talent. William Wyre's precious Tom Horn, the philanthropic Elliot Silverstein, A Man Called Horse, and Ralph Nelson, much discussed Soldier Blue. This linking to American poetics is perhaps one of the greatest compliments that could be given to the work of Leone. Beyond this, it is beyond doubt that his cinema of memory, as criticized at the time as it is now often exalted, invited numerous directors and field personalities to reflection and critical stylistic revision. It ended up inspiring the new ranks of filmmakers ready to prostrate themselves in front of shots such as the Triello, the Truel, of The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, as strongly as it influenced those filmmakers who have always shown themselves to nourish high authorial ambitions or to have an approach and a vision almost completely different than that of Leone. The discourse, if one would want, could be amplified out of proportion by touching also on the works and style of filmmakers who participated in a sort of evolution and modern re-elaboration of the American genre par excellence in which it is rooted, in other words, the road movie. It would be all too easy, then, to trace parallels of this type, just like the idealized America, which in its constant work of renovation and affirmation wants to perpetuate nothing but itself, so the popular cinema, bigger than life, as Leone put it, as is at the core cinema that wants to be nothing but cinema. Finally, and fatally, Sergio Leone will die in Rome on April the 30th, 1989, while, for an ironic destiny, he was watching on TV the beloved Robert Wise movie, I Want to Live. Since his death, Leone's films have become something of a template for directors wishing to imbue their self-conscious use of genre iconography with a sense of dreamlike nostalgia for imaginary lost times. But few filmmakers have matched Leone's skill at deconstructing Hollywood dreams while at the same time retaining a melancholy longing for their revalidation. Although he remains a controversial figure in critical circles, his stylistic influence is everywhere in 90s American cinema, from Back to the Future Part the Third, by Robert Zemeckis, to the work, of course, of Quentin Tarantino and his associate Robert Rodriguez. Leone-like imaginary and Morricone-sounding scores have formed the basis of countless television commercials, surely the final proof that his stylistic traits are now firmly entrenched in the lexicon of cinematic cliché. His Spanish-flavored images of the Western frontier, dramatic flourishes and prolonged poses have become a thoroughly internalized part of the Western genre iconography. The Leone style, some 40 years after he made his first Western, has become absorbed into the same mythology of the 20th century cinema to which so much of his work was devoted to exploring. And now I will introduce the film, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. Well, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly is on top of most people's lists with favorite westerns, and Quentin Tarantino has called it the best directed movie of all time. The title has been referred to in fashion, construction, baseball, politics, pop music, and God knows what more. Ennio Morricone's theme music has been used and misused so often that it has become instantly recognizable to people of all ages in all corners of the world. According to Dario Argento, who interviewed him at the time for an Italian newspaper, Sergio Leone had several films in mind after completing the second Dollar movie, among them a biopic about Calamity Jane and Wild Bill Hickok, with Sophia Loren as Calamity Jane, a remake of Viva Villa, a romanticized biopic of Pancho Villa, and an adventure movie set in war times. Some think The Good, the Bad and the Ugly originated in combining ideas for the remake and adventure movie set in wartime. Leone was not really fascinated by the Mexican Revolution, unlike some of his colleagues, nor in the historic figure of Pancho Villa, but had been impressed by Wallace Beery, who had portrayed the revolutionary as the typical ebullient Latin character. He wanted to keep the character, but use it within a different context. The background for his movie would not be the Mexican Revolution, but the American Civil War. His main character, not an altruist who was concerned with the destiny of his people, but a good-for-nothing who tried to survive in wartime by using the hostilities to his own advantage. Two other works of art inspired Leone in particularly while making The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. An Italian film from 1959, La Grande Guerra, The Great War, directed by Mario Monicelli and co-scripted by Luciano Vincenzoni and the duo Age and Scarpelli, about a couple of not-so-brave soldiers who try to avoid war hostilities, and the novella Des Amis, The Two Friends, by 19th century French author Guy de Maupassant, about two French fishermen who accidentally get lost between the lines during the Franco-Prussian War. Both works are rather light-hearted at the surface, but thought-provoking and deeply pessimistic at the core. In The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, the adventures of the three men are often seasoned with funny one-liners and moments of great burlesque humor, but there are also shootouts, elaborated scenes of physical and mental torment, and moments of great brutality. We get images of ruined towns, mutilated men, improvised army hospitals full of heavily wounded casualties, war thieves digging their own grave before being executed, etc. Often described, even by American critics, as the most impressive depiction of the Civil War, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly is also a bitter foreshadowing of the great conflicts of the 20th century. The scenes of the entranced armies fighting a bloody battle over a bridge seem to refer to the battlefields of World War I, while Leone has admitted that he thought partly of the Nazi concentration camps with their Jewish orchestras when he was filming the scenes in the northern prison camp. Leone's original choice for this ugly character was Gian Maria Volonté, but he was afraid the character would become a neuropath when played by Volonté, and that was not what he had in mind. But then he saw Eli Wallach, some say in How the West Was Won, others say in the Magnificent Seven. and all of a sudden he knew he had found the right actor. A dramatic actor with a natural talent for comedy who reminded him of both Wallace Beery and Charlie Chaplin. The Good, the Bad and the Ugly is the third and most ambitious part of Sergio Leone's so-called Dollar Trilogy, and also his third movie starring Clint Eastwood, the man who made himself a name by becoming the man with no name. Eastwood had been a cynical opportunist in A Fistful of Dollars and a bounty hunter in For a Few Dollars More. In The Good, the Bad and the Ugly is again an opportunist. In the triptych Good, Bad, Ugly, he represents the good. But don't be fooled. Like the opportunist and the bounty hunter from the previous two movies, the good is basically interested in money. For a Few Dollars More, No Name had appeared alongside a second protagonist, Colonel Mortimer, played by Lee Van Cleef, and the newcomer had stolen the movie away from the veteran. Now a third character was added, and again this newcomer would walk away with the movie. Eli Wallach's ambiguous character is the anchor point of the story, with two other characters, one good, one bad, contrasting with his ugly nature. Neither of them was to be defined in traditional terms of morality. Blondie is only good because he is not as ugly as Tuco, and Tuco is only ugly because he is not as bad as Sentenza, Angel Eyes in English. But all three are rather merciless opportunists, ready to kill if necessary, and villains in the traditional good-bad polarization of the Western movie. Leone wanted to demystify the adjectives and at the same time show the absurdity of war. The movie has been called a comical nightmare as well as a study of the horrors of war. It is deeply rooted in the tradition of the picaresque novel and the commedia dell'arte, two Latin literary traditions. The picaresque story of three adventurers chasing the same treasures is punctuated by brief but poignant images of the war. We catch glimpses of executions, humiliation, and torture, and it all culminates in the protracted scene of the trench war at Langstone Bridge. The cruelty of the war also defines the morality of the movie and the characters involved in it. The three men can be real bastards, but the war is shown as an inferno of destruction and pain. Ironically, the war also intervened to save lives. A mysterious Confederate death wagon appears from nowhere when Tuco is about to kill Blondie, a mortar shell breaks the beam from which Blondie is about to be hanged, etc. This is the true absurdity of the war and of life. Blowing up the bridge, basically a selfish act. If those idiots stop fighting, we can cross the river, this is a quotation, also becomes an act of mercy. Thanks to Blondie and Tuco, the sympathetic Union officer, the philosopher of the movie, can rest in peace. This idea of life by destruction is mirrored in the famous ecstasy of gold scene, with a greedy and ecstatic Tuco running in circles, looking for an aim that can change his life in the midst of this altar of death, a cemetery called Sad Hill.